So we've seen that innovation is all about survival and growth. But survival is not compulsory. Now, at one level, it's obvious. If we don't change what we offer the world and the ways we create and deliver that offering, we may not be around. But what about the companies that get that and still don't survive? Well, let's look at a few examples. No one could accuse Kodak of being a stupid company. Like our earlier examples, founded by an entrepreneur, George Eastman, a brilliant idea that wasn't just a technology, but a way of using it. A paradigm change, moving the idea of photography from the specialist photographer's studio to everyone's home. It was very simple. You buy a box Brownie camera, and the slogan made it clear what happened. You point and shoot, click, and we'll do the rest. We'll handle the developing and the printing, and you get back pictures. Wonderful, an innovation which for his company was enormously powerful. That's a company that over most of its life was extremely successful. It became a household name. And yet, despite its growth to being a large global corporation, Kodak is in deep trouble. It's not dead, but it's in Chapter 11 bankruptcy, struggling to survive a fraction of its former size. Now, this might seem a bit of a paradox. How can you be a really smart, innovative player committed to innovation and still have problems? Well, the answer may lie in what Charles Darwin said. Remember, he said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. And that adaptable to change is something that matters over time. So Kodak were able to ride a wave or ride several waves of change to their advantage, new technologies, new markets, and so on. The thing that was a problem for Kodak was learning to deal with something they invented, the digital camera. And actually the problem was that the world and the way they wanted to consume what the digital camera made possible was not something that Kodak were aligned well enough with. Now, it's not an easy trick. Kodak didn't necessarily make a lot of mistakes. It's very easy to say they were stupid. They certainly weren't stupid, but their ability to innovate under those new conditions wasn't sufficient. But what that really illustrates is it's not just learning to innovate and building a business on that. It's also being prepared to step back and reset the model for innovation. So there's more to this innovation survival trick than simply we have to innovate to stay alive. We may need to innovate our innovation. Now, this theme of what I would call innovation model innovation, being prepared to adapt our approach to innovation, is characteristic of a very positive group that we might look at. These are members of the 100 Club. They're companies that have survived for longer than 100 years. And if you think about it, anybody gets lucky once or twice, but to survive 100 years or more, you have to be doing more than that. You have to be innovating and sometimes innovating your innovation. And whilst we can think of many companies, there's not an infinite number. So this is a good laboratory to look at good practice in making innovation work. Think about Procter & Gamble. 200 plus years old, essentially a company that's all about household products, originally making candles and now a whole range of other things. What characterizes Procter & Gamble is a commitment to innovation and the willingness to change their model. They're not alone in that. If you look at 3M, the Minnesota mining and manufacturing company, essentially 3M, again over 100 years old, a company strongly associated with innovation, but it's a company that actually began with a failure. The mining part of the company was to do with mining carborundum, the hard rock that allows you to make sandpaper to rub surfaces clean. And they opened the mine only to find that they hadn't really got the right kind of rock. They'd got the geology wrong. Fortunately, they were able to survive because they had some other approaches to innovation, including the idea of sandpaper that you could use wet. So you didn't have, in the early factories where it was being used, you didn't have lots of dust. So it's a company that innovated, not always successfully, but learned how to manage innovation. Now, if we take the 100 Club members, organizations that have survived 100 years or more, and clearly for whom innovation is important, there are some common features. We can almost ask the question, what's their recipe for innovation success over the long term? And we can distill 5 key themes. Number 1, they're committed to innovation. They have a vision for how innovation is going to take us forward. Number 2, Innovation is about ideas creating value. So if we don't have the ideas, if we haven't got the knowledge base to begin with, we aren't going to be able to make that happen. So all of them invest in the knowledge base on which they stand. The next thing is they innovate in many directions. We're going to come back to this in a later film, but essentially they really explore the innovation space around them. They also recognize innovation is not magic. It doesn't just happen. It happens through people and through developing capabilities to convert ideas to value. And the last point, all of them have this capacity not just to put in place a way of innovating, but also the capacity to step back and change that. So these 5 things seem to constitute some key ingredients in the innovation recipe for long-term success. Now, all the organizations we've been talking about have been commercial organizations, but exactly the same recipe, the same approach applies to organizations where creating money is not their only goal. The public sector or organizations who are trying to do social innovation. The same principles apply. If we take an organization like the Red Cross, it's been around a long time. It has to innovate. Much of what it does is about dealing with crisis, with humanitarian disasters, where we need new responses. We need innovation. And their approach to innovation has been to do it, but increasingly to step back and say, how else could we do it? What new tools could we use? And beginning to think about the digital space. What lessons can we learn from other innovators? This idea of constantly reviewing and updating the innovation approach. So to summarize once again, innovation is very much about this capacity, not just to build an ability to innovate, but to adapt and change it over time. So let's try and summarize. Survival isn't guaranteed in a turbulent environment, even for smart companies with a commitment to innovation. As Charles Darwin told us, it's not being big or it's not being intelligent, it is about adaptability. And the lessons we can learn from those companies that have succeeded, the 100 Club, the recipe for success includes vision, having a commitment to innovation, building a strong knowledge base so there are ideas from which to create value, exploring innovation in many different directions, building the capability and skills to make innovation happen, and having the capacity to step back and adapt the innovation approach, innovation model innovation. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about all of that.